if I could go back, I absolutely wouldn't have done this. I would just be like a kick-ass butch lesbian and live my life.
Okay, everybody, I got another one. I am so excited this afternoon because this person I'm bringing on is just a beautiful human being. Has been dealing with some stuff on the internet that we'll talk about here, but I just feel very blessed and really that he reached out. I reached out to him and he reached back real quick. And so before I do that, like, comment, subscribe. I don't know, all those things you guys do. I don't even know anymore. But if you could do that, help me grow this. It really helps me bring these amazing voices on. So this afternoon we have Casey here, and so I'm just going to let Casey introduce himself, and we'll just start right out the gate, my friend. So please introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name is Casey. I'm 21 years old, and I am a product of the pediatric gender affirming care model. I began medically transitioning when I was 17, and I think I got top surgery like 6 months afterwards. Within a year of kind of coming out to when I went off to college, let me see. Like, I was medically transitioned completely, hormones, top surgery, name change, gender marker change, everything changed. And then, kind of went on my life like, okay, I'm going to live as a guy, that's going to be fine. And I never really questioned anything. I had some thoughts in the back of my mind as I went going on, because transition didn't really fix all my problems. And now with the prevailing stuff in the narrative that's going on about fighting back against child transition efforts, I'm like, wait, hold on, maybe, like, did I do this for the right reasons? And then looking at the detransitioning stories and seeing, well, hey, maybe this wasn't because I was trans, maybe it was because of something else, and just disagreeing with the whole model of care. And then I spoke out on Twitter, and 2 days later, I went viral. So that's where we are now.
But first off, thank you. Wow, dude, I know I watched it and I was like, this is so you are powerful, my friend. You are powerful. So that, and I appreciate you, and many people, not only in our community but in the world, appreciate you, because again, I don't care what people say out there. This is your story, and that's been that sort of mantra that the trans community. It's our authentic story. But when your authentic story doesn't resonate with what they're putting out, you're no longer trans and you're no longer a part of this community. So that's where I have a huge problem with the community, and the fact that a person like you is willing to step up and say, hey, wait a minute, did I do the right thing? So I want to backtrack a little bit about your beginning when you started. So you started at 17?
Yes. A lot of the Twitter stuff, because I said I began the questioning process at 16, say that I started hormones at 16. Yeah. But frankly, it was a month after I turned 17.
So which is a youngster to me. Now, remember how old I am. And I always feel that a person who's under 18, even 21, is still a young person who is not necessarily going to make that huge choice. So you made the choice. So tell me how you did that. Like, who did you contact? What was the process of you getting on the hormones?
So the process of getting on hormones, it was, I think, December 2017, when I started testosterone. And in May of that year, April of that year, I was really struggling with my self-image. I wouldn't say I had gender dysphoria, but like I felt like an incongruence with myself, because I thought I was a lesbian at the time. I was kind of butch presenting, but I still had longer hair. I wasn't allowed to cut my hair because that's what boys did. That was the kind of the home life I grew up in. I forget what exact video I saw on YouTube, because I was like just Googling random stuff. I had no idea what trans people were. That was not information I had access to. And I think the video that kind of opened my eyes was Trans in Love and at War. It was a New York Times op-ed that was about Layla and Logan Ireland. And, seeing Logan Ireland, I was like, hold on, this is something that can actually happen. This isn't just, boys trying to be girls and girls trying to be boys. This is like a legitimate thing that people can, go on medication and they can actually, live out their life. And I thought, well, maybe what he's saying kind of resonates with what I'm feeling, so maybe that's it. So then, I kind of came out in May, and my mom at first was like, no, this is ridiculous, like, what are you doing? And then finally she was like, okay, if this is the case, if this is how you feel and this is the route we want to go, let's go to some experts so they can help us figure it out. So we went to, should I name the clinic? I mean, they're a very well-known clinic.
No.
Children's Hospital of Philadelphia Gender Clinic, which was a few hours away from me, to be evaluated behaviorally. The first contact happened in September, and then I had an appointment in October. First appointment in September, second appointment in October, and then after those 2 appointments, I got the referral letter to a local LGBT health clinic, where in December I received hormones.
All right, I'm gonna my old brain, because that's I consider that fast tracking. So September is your first. September's your first, and I'm not laughing like at
No, it's fine. It's ridiculous looking back at it.
The absurdity.
I thought it was slow at the time. I thought it was slow, but that's because I was 16. I wanted something, and I wanted it yesterday. But now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, what on earth?
So September you start. You have another appointment in October, and by December they're giving you a letter to start hormones.
Well, actually, they gave the letter to me in October, but it wasn't until December that I was able to get an appointment with a provider that felt comfortable giving me the hormones.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So the provider was a little more of a pushback than the actual clinic, the trans. And so can you tell me what happened in that trans clinic when you went? You saw, was it a therapist, an affirmative therapist that you
I saw a licensed psychologist.
Okay.
And she was one of the leaders of the gender clinic, Linda Hawkins. I mean, I don't mind me naming her because everybody knows who she is and that she does these evaluations. She did these evaluations, and I don't hold anything against her either. That's the other thing. But in the evaluations, I believe both appointments total were about 3 hours time, and not all of that was with me. Some of that was with my mom. And it's just her and I and the family dynamic. I'm an only child, and she's the legal parent in the situation. So, but I don't remember most of the conversation with me besides the fact that it was a lot of data acquisition. It was a lot of just asking about my past, asking about, social situations where I felt like, do I feel like I fit more in a male role in social situations or a female role? I also got, I think, the gender pie, which was basically just like, here's a circle, fill out the pie chart. How much do you feel like a man, like percentage-wise? What percentage do you feel like a woman, and what percentage do you feel like non-binary? So
wow.
I also saw the gingerbread.
Oh, you saw the gingerbread? Of course you did.
Yeah, the gingerbread.
So basically they're just like, oh my gosh, this is just so I don't even know what to say.
No,
I'm
it's
just
fine.
like,
You can laugh. It's absurd.
I am. I'm actually like blown away that it just is that simple, and that's really what I want. This is why you're powerful, because I need for the world to hear this. When I say things like this, or other people, oh, that's not happening. That takes years to get hormones. Really? No, it doesn't take years to get hormones. That's a complete.
And people say, well, you say you like the first meeting was in September and then you got hormones in December. That's 6 months of therapy. And I'm like, it was 6 months from first contact to when I actually got the script, but it was 3 hours split between 2 people. And it wasn't therapy. It was literally asking questions, getting answers. There was no, well, why do you think you feel that? Well, let's dig into this idea a little bit more. Right. There was no pushback, none whatsoever.
That's right. That's the key. And that's what I say to everybody. I got so much pushback. Oh, gosh. And I don't want people thinking I'm the end-all, be-all. I'm just telling you my experience and why I'm solid in my transition. Because I got a ton. It took me 2 years of therapy to be able to get that letter and to be able to sort of move into this next level that you're going 3 hours, letter, bam. And that is 3 months. I don't care what anybody says. You can add it up there, and you can clear. And it's your story, and you know your own story, and you know your own truth, right?
Yeah, and again, the other thing in like medicine and other things too is they say, well, that's not what's on the website, and that's not what I went through, and they say that's not how the process works. Well, just because they say that's not how it works doesn't mean bad things didn't happen.
That's right. I mean, come on, you're not the only one talking about this, right? We have a lot of
that's
people.
the thing.
That's the thing. It's not like you're like the lone person. So now you're transitioned, my friend, and you're living your life. And so what happens now? So you start hormones, and now I want to take it from that space.
So I was in my senior year of high school. Luckily, I had like a pretty low course load. I only had 3 courses, and they were all music courses. Because the idea was I was going to major in music ed in college. I was going to be a music teacher. And I was not doing great mentally at the time, for years leading up to that. The year before that, I had hospitalized myself inpatient because things were getting pretty bad and they were going to come to a boiling point where I was going to try and do something really stupid. So things were kind of rocky, and I thought, well, maybe as the transition happens and as the hormones start working and I feel the gender euphoria, some of the suicidality and some of that is going to reduce. Like I was told your life is going to become more bearable now because you're going to feel at peace with yourself, and your body's going to line up with your mind. Let's just say they had to pull me out in May, like 4 weeks before graduation, because I was so unstable. I was on the brink of having to go back inpatient.
Oh gosh, kiddo, that's just horrible. So
I mean,
testosterone
that's
didn't,
reality.
but that is reality. There's a high rate of suicidal ideation in the LGBT community. So that's just sad. So you're taking the hormones, and it's not alleviating. So that's what I'm hearing. It's not alleviating the suicidal ideation or the feelings.
I mean, the hormones started working right away. I was lucky that they didn't just put me on 100 milligrams weekly and hoped for the best and just blasted me with it. It took me 10 months to work up to full dose, which was 100 milligrams weekly. But as soon as I took probably 50 milligrams every 2 weeks, after that first shot, within 2 days, my voice was dropping noticeably. Like, people knew. I didn't tell anybody at school, and they were just like, you started hormones, didn't you?
Yeah, because but you do have a very deep voice. I have more of that tranny voice. But that being said, I could see people. That's one of the telltale signs of transition is our voices, right? We start going in that weird space.
Yeah, I know a couple years ago, like on YouTube and so on, that was like the tranny voice was, something that people would look at themselves and be like, oh God, do I have that?
Totally.
And at certain points in my transition, I did have that voice, and I'm like, shit, what am I gonna do?
I know. I mean, I got it for life, dude. I call it the Mickey Mouse voice. I like Mickey Mouse. So wow. Okay, wow. So now you're, in that space. You're still suicidal. You go back. You check yourself back into the mental space, and then.
I didn't check myself back in. Okay. I was close to it. Had I still stayed in the school environment, I probably would have ended up back there. And then, interestingly enough, that happened in May, and then I had top surgery in June.
Okay, well, now this is where it's going to get totally interesting. Not the suicidal stuff is very horrible, and I'm very sorry about that. And it's just I had the same thing. So now you're that, and in May you're feeling this way, and in June you get top surgery.
Yes, and I think
and you're feeling suicidal.
Yes. And I believe we got the call to schedule in May as well, to do it in June, that we had gotten the go-ahead.
So they didn't ask you any questions like, how are you feeling mentally? Do you feel prepared for this surgery? Did they ask you any of these kind of questions?
I mean, I think they probably did, but I was trying to tell myself, like everything's going great, like you're going to feel fine, like it's all going to be okay, this is what you're supposed to do. Like, just go ahead and do it.
Talking yourself into it.
And also, part of it, too, is that there was a rush, because I was doing this as a senior, and then I was going off to college. I wanted to go off to college completely stealth. And, my primary instrument was trumpet, and playing trumpet with a compression vest on is not fun. I had done marching band the summer before binding, which they tell you not to do, but I was 16, I'm going to do it anyways. It's not a fun time, so I was like, okay, we need to fast track everything and get this stuff done. And the clinic was like, we absolutely agree, make sure you have a fresh start at college. So it was like full steam ahead. Just say what you need to say to get the surgery, it's going to be fine. And also, the surgery wasn't performed by CHOP. They outsourced it to a plastic surgeon that doesn't really work that much with trans people. He's just a general plastic surgeon, but he was willing to do the surgery.
With no understanding of trans male top surgery. So he's just going to do your surgery. And so how'd your surgery come out? Were you okay with it?
So I kind of went in thinking that, to be blunt, I was probably like a size B cup. And I think I was only a size B because, my rib cage is so wide that I would have to size up just to get the band to fit around me for bras and stuff. I went in thinking I was going to have a double incision, but he said, well, I can just kind of go here and kind of take things out and so on, to do keyhole, like in trans community terms. So that's what happened. It kind of, on the right side, he kind of ended up having to go almost completely around the nipple. So I had that. I had this weird tape compression thing. Like, it wasn't like a binder vest. It was like a weird tape thing. I don't even know. The adhesive stuck on me like crazy, and I had drains in for 5 days. And then I came back, and they pulled them out, and I looked down, and you know how, like, in all those videos, everybody is, like, they're looking in the mirror, and it's like, I see myself for the first time. I look down, and I go, what the hell happened here? It basically looks like he took a circle cookie cutter out where the, where the breast tissue was, and kind of just, like, stamp and pulled it out. And he said that that would kind of dissipate with time, and it didn't. So,
wow.
And there's
how
also
many years
like
ago?
divots underneath where the incisions are.
Right.
At this point, over 4 years.
And it hasn't gone away. You still have that sort of. Is it like an indentation, or is it like a?
Yeah,
mark?
it's an indentation. Like, if I lift my arm up, you can clearly see there's like a circle where he excised the tissue.
Right. It's very important people hear this. It's not what you see on TikTok, and it's not, this idea that it's so perfect and it's gonna change. This is irreversible surgery. Let's remind people of that. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and I just think I'm so glad I didn't have double incision. Like, I didn't have to. Nothing against double incision, but in terms of
scarring, you mean?
The scarring. Also, you're grafting a piece of tissue. Given it's your own tissue onto something else, there's a chance that the graft could fail. There's just so many more moving parts with that versus, okay, like, I had like 2 little cuts, and then somebody went in and like kind of cut things out, sucked them out, and then sewed it back up.
And so, how do you feel about that today? Are you comfortable with your chest being that way?
I mean, I'm perfectly fine with it being flat. Like, that doesn't bother me. Certainly, you're not going to see me going shirtless anywhere, but that's also just because of body insecurity. But if I don't, like, shave body hair, for instance, it's not passable. Like, clearly something happened. Depending on the environment, I could probably play it off as, oh, I had gyno, I had surgery, and that would be fine. But it definitely looks like something was, like, there was some sort of operation. It's not super passable. So I don't take that risk, and I also don't frequent public pools and have...
How does that make you feel about yourself?
I mean, I don't know as much, because with a lot of stuff, I've had a lot of medical things in my life go wrong. Gastrointestinal issues, constant allergies, getting sick, and now within the past year, kind of some illnesses that have made me reconsider and switch my major again, because I can't really do a lot of stuff physically. So I've tried to not view physical changes in my body in a good or bad light, more like, this is just what it is. This is reality. Take it or leave it. What can I do to move forward? But, at the same time, it's kind of like, I take my shirt off in the mirror and I see it's just a reminder of what happened. Like, wow, that's not going back.
So the message I'm getting from you here is that surgery isn't the end-all be-all, and that it might not be the thing that all of a sudden aligns your brain with your body, and that everything is hunky-dory and you're going to move forward in the world. That's sort of the message that I think I'm hearing here. Yeah, it's true though. So now you're living your life as a trans man, and you have that. And do you start to go to the university now?
Yeah, so I actually started at Penn State, Maine, because that's the only place that they have their music program. So think 50,000 wild, rambunctious teenagers and young adults. It's a wild ride. I was able to mostly live as stealth, except there were some people that knew me in high school from other schools that were in the program that I didn't realize, so they kind of casually outed me to everybody. That's nice. Oh yeah, no, I've had multiple instances of people that knew me pre-transition, knowing that I was transitioning and trying to live as stealth, outing me. It's fun.
Disgusting. That's like, just outing is disgusting. I don't care if you're trans or gay, whatever. That's your personal business.
Well, it's funny because one of the main person that outed me now is self-proclaimed non-binary.
Well, of course they are.
So she's just living her life, and
that's right.
I'm like, yeah, you realize you outed me 4 years ago, right?
Do you think that she cares or they care? They don't care. It's just really about them. But that's the hypocrisy of this community, right? If you outed
Yeah.
them, the whole world would die. So, I have another idea about the non-binary voice, which I don't care if you're non-binary, that's your choice, but they've really taken over the trans narrative and the trans space, and it's kind of bizarre to me. But so now
Well,
you're in Penn
yeah.
State. Yeah, you have a comment on that?
Oh, no, no, you can continue.
So now you're in Penn State, and it's kind of difficult. So did you notice that there were other trans people there?
So
At
there
Penn State?
was, I think, one other trans guy that I knew of, and then I think there was a trans woman that she was trying her hardest, but she really had to try. She unfortunately she wasn't passing, and most people were kind of sympathetic to that, but some people weren't.
Yeah.
We never talked though, because I tried to talk to her and she told me to fuck off. So
What is wrong with everybody? It's so bizarre, dude. We're supposed to all be
So-
family and like supporting each other.
I know, and especially like in the School of Music, we're all just kind of suffering together.
Yeah.
Yep. Signing our lives away, going into debt to make virtually no money.
Yep.
Like we're
I
all
hear
in a
ya.
struggle bus together.
That's right.
Yeah,
Wow.
we're like attacking each other.
No, I know. It just my brain doesn't comprehend that because we're allowed to disagree on stuff. What we should not be doing is hating on each other. It's just bizarre behavior. It's killing us. You know that. The community is just like dwindling down.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then all the people who actually really hate us and actually really don't want to see us are using all of our stuff against us, and it's working. Oh gosh, it's really, for me as an elder in this community, it's a little depressing, but that's okay. We're gonna come back up from this. So now you're living in trans. I want to know how you're feeling at Penn State, and was there during Penn State, was it when you decided that you were feeling not in your trans? Like, I guess my question is, so where are you now? What happened? So you were living trans at Penn State. What happened?
So surprise alert, or spoiler alert, I was depressed there too. And I only lasted there a year, actually, before I transferred out because, again, I was severely depressed and it was going to go somewhere really bad if I didn't do anything. I wasn't feeling fulfilled in my major. Something just felt off the entire time. Like, oh, I'm passing, I'm not getting misgendered, I look male, but something felt off. I felt like, am I missing something here? And I grappled also with the idea of bottom dysphoria. I've never had bottom dysphoria. I don't think I've legitimately ever had it. But there was some prevailing thoughts at the time in the community that if you didn't have all of the dysphoria, that you weren't trans enough. So I was, experimenting with packing and that kind of stuff, and it frankly just got in the way more so for me than anything. But I was like, nope, this is what you got to do. Like maybe this will help my incongruence or something. And it still felt like I was putting on an act, especially because I play trumpet, and it's interesting because the stereotype for a trumpet player I would compare to like the stereotypical white rich Republican asshole. Wow. Like literally they put out their hand, they go, hi, I'm better than you. That's how they introduce themselves. I'm not joking. And so because of my instrument, you would do like brass chamber groups and play with a lot of the brass players, and it was all of these, older, middle-aged, somewhat younger guys, very heteronormative, and just kind of seeing the environment. And some of it was, just like normal guy stuff. Some of it was, what locker room talk and just saying horrible things about women. And I'm just sitting there like, don't react. But at the same time, I never felt like I fit in. And I felt like I had to like put on an act just to kind of defend my stance, if you will, that I was a real man. So, but I didn't know it was putting on an act at the time. I didn't know that's how I felt. I just knew something was off.
Well, yeah, I totally resonate with that 100%. In my early transition, it's like, what is a man? Like, how do I feel like a man? And then I would have the same thing in the locker rooms. These dudes just saying all kinds of insane shit. And you're just like, I totally resonate with that. Like, what do I do? If I say this, I might out myself, or, it's a difficult space to be in when you're transitioning to live as a male, because we were socialized female on, on some level.
Yeah.
And even though we feel male, what does that actually mean? And so it's really hard. It's taken me years to find my footing around my masculinity. But I can't even imagine transing today because you have so much pressure. I didn't have that pressure when I transitioned. There was no community. But I think the community pressures people like you to conform also to sort of some stereotype of what it means to be a trans man, right? Like what you're telling me, for example, the bottom surgery, right? As you know, the whole world knows I don't have bottom surgery. I never got it. I don't want it. I live a perfectly healthy life. So it's interesting to me that that's still such a kind of really adamant space for trans men. And so now you're living your life, but are you questioning? Is that what's happening?
Looking back on it, I was questioning, but I kept telling myself, well, no, like, this is your life now. Like, this is what it is. Like, you're living as a guy. You're fitting in more so now than you were before. That's why I told myself, in reality, my social role had not changed one bit. How I wanted to act, besides, like, some of the masking I would do, did not change at all from when I was in high school, living, openly as, like, a butch woman to now, or, when I was in college. None of that had changed. Except for times when I tried to, like, more so put on an act to not out myself to the people who didn't know I was trans, because there were some people, but I always felt like something was still off. But I'm like, just like soldier through, you don't have time to think about this, just get to the end of the semester and kind of just put it on the back burner, let it simmer a little bit internally for years.
Who was your community? Did you have a community? Did you have friendships? No. None. So,
well, I had people I knew within the School of Music, but I did not know really anybody else that was LGBT. In fact, you might find this surprising. This is probably the first full-length conversation I've had with another transgender individual in my life.
Well,
I have
yeah.
never,
On some
like,
level,
I don't know anybody else. Sorry, I don't know anybody else like me. I've never really known anybody else like me. Talking online is one thing, but, like, I've never, looked in the face and, like, talked to somebody that's been through my similar experience before.
Well, on some level, I'm going to say that's a good thing, because it's sort of with myself as well. I transitioned by myself, and I do think on some level that's very empowering, because you're not being sort of told how to be, if that makes sense, or you're sort of emulating all of them are this way and that. You understand what I'm saying? So by doing it yourself and being stealth, you're actually transitioning to live male. You're not transitioning to be trans, which is what I say all the time. Trans is now an identity choice. I don't think me and you wanted to identify as trans. We want to be men.
No.
Big difference. Big difference. So
oh, yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of healthy on some level that you were alone. Not being alone is not super healthy, but being not sucked into the trans agenda and around a bunch of trans people and sort of being in that space can be difficult. So then you started questioning, and then what happened after you started questioning? So
So I started questioning, and then I was like, no, you don't have time for this. Like, this is your reality now. Just, like, suck it up. It's probably related to something else. I went back to therapy. I left Penn State, and I was like, okay, now I got to figure out another major. So in the time period, I kind of took some gen eds, was taking some classes, trying to figure out, and then I think after a year or two, I was, or 2 years, I was on to nursing, because my mom's a nurse, and I kind of knew about the career because of that, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do nursing school, that's fine, and I was working through therapy and trying to work through some of, like, the things that I've been through in my life. And I would have continued, but my therapist, literally within a week's notice, quit on me. She had a mental breakdown, completely left the field of therapy, and is now supposedly flipping houses with her boyfriend in South Carolina.
I'm not laughing. I'm not.
No,
wow.
You can laugh. It's ridiculous.
Oh, gosh. Was she a trans therapist or just like a regular?
No, she wasn't.
Wow.
It's funny because I mentioned it on Twitter, and people are like, I wonder if she peaked. I wonder if that's why she left. I honestly don't know. She wasn't the one that gave me the letter or anything. She played no role in that.
Right.
I mean, she did explore some topics with me, but she's like, I'm not the professional to handle this. You need to go to somebody that has expertise in this. This is not my realm. I'm not going to write the letter. Like, that's not going to be it.
Well, I have to
actually,
commend
she did provide
her.
pushback. Yeah.
Commend her on that. Brilliant. That's actually right. She doesn't have the expertise, so how could she feel? But what is the expertise? I don't even know if there is at this point, because I do believe all trans people are different. I think we all come to this in a different means and way we want to. So I don't understand this like idea that we have these therapists that know, right? There's like what, 5 questions, and if you answer these 5 questions, you're trans. That's kind of what I'm hearing. Yeah. Wow.
Well, and the other thing too, in terms of like who is the authority on like, you know, understanding gender ideology and like being able to diagnose gender dysphoria, it's funny because CHOP kind of peddled themselves as like one of the first pediatric gender clinics in the nation.
Yeah.
And in terms of determining who has like the right to say or you know, kind of give this diagnosis because of expertise, they're the ones that trained the people at the local LGBT clinic that I get hormones from to be able to provide hormone therapy.
So you see that right there.
And they also trained, so near where I am, Penn State actually has a healthcare system. People don't know that necessarily. They have a healthcare system. They have a school of medicine, so they have a medical school near where I am. And they also have a children's hospital that is pretty well known, and it's a research hospital too. Now they have a gender clinic. It's not super widely known, but they have a gender clinic, and they were trained by CHOP people.
I have an issue with that. I'm going to just say it because that's very biased on some level. Like, what does that even mean, a gender clinic? Where are you getting these information from, right? Who says that you can just open a gender clinic? What are the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you know, what makes you a gender clinic? Do you have to go through training? Do you have to, you understand what I'm saying? Like, who's saying these are gender clinics? That's the problem I have. Like, because I just said it before, we're all different. There's no 5 questions to ask all of us the same, why we feel this way or why we're transitioning. That's the problem I have with these so-called gender clinics, that really, they just want to see you transition. I don't really believe that they push back on anybody. From every story I've heard, none.
Yeah, no pushback, none.
No pushback, none. So anyone who walks in is automatically trans. That is just insane. So here you are living your life, and now what? Are you detransitioning? Because
so I was kind of debating back and forth in my head, and certainly I think the questioning began with, I actually went to the Philly Trans Wellness Conference in 2019. So let's think that was probably 1.5 years on hormones, 1 year post-op. And I went there, and some of the stuff that I saw being talked about and some of the things that I was hearing about, I was like, wow. This is no insult to anybody. It felt like I was at the circus. Just, you've got all these people, all these different presentations. I forget what the conference center is that it's held at. It's like one of the big conference centers.
Yeah, I've been to it. It's that big conference center. Yes, huge.
Yeah, and what really appalled me at first and kind of made me look like, what the hell are we doing, was the fact that the bathrooms, the men's and women's bathrooms, were changed to all gender bathrooms, and there were children going in.
Oh, wow.
So, like, you know, both sides, they have all gender, you know, whoever it is, anybody can go in there.
Anybody.
And
anybody.
There's kids here. And
anybody, people. Adults. Anybody. Remember that. Anybody. They're not just trans people going in there. Anybody. And so now we have little kids in there. Who's going to follow these little kids into these bathrooms, people? Let's just be honest here. Why are people having why are we not having that discussion? It's so bizarre to me. We can have a gendered bathroom. I have no issues, but you got to have a man and a woman's bathroom. I want to use the men's room. I actually do. I don't want to use the non-gendered bathroom. I want to walk right into the dude's room and be a dude. I don't know about you, but so it's not fair. Now I have an all-gendered bathroom. That actually doesn't make me feel comfortable. So how come I don't get to feel
frankly, that doesn't make anybody feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And it just opens up the door for bad things to happen. That was the first thing, and then learning about some of the clinics in Planned Parenthood and the informed consent model in adults.
Yep.
And I was like, hold on. All the research I had done, which people think I didn't do research, I did some research, as much as a 16-year-old could do, was kind of more the model of what you went through was, you know, you have to do at least 6 months of therapy or ideally a year of therapy, and you have to socially transition before you get medical transition to see if it's a right fit, and you take everything slow, and you wait a couple years, and it's like this long, arduous process, which we now know is to try and keep people safe and to make sure that this is the right thing and that the symptoms of gender dysphoria aren't actually symptoms of something else that kind of look like gender dysphoria, right?
Yeah.
But then when I found out, I completely ignored my experience. I forgot about my experience. I thought, well, I was critically ill. They told my mom I was going to kill myself if we didn't do this fast. So I was a special case. This doesn't apply to me. But then seeing Planned Parenthood and hearing that, like, in one appointment you can walk in, no behavioral health assessment, just get hormones and go away, I was like, that's not right. Like, I didn't agree with it. I thought it was horrible.
Because you're smart and you actually see it as you see the mistake they're making. Why would you want to push somebody on hormones so fast? As you can see, what happened to you and what happened to me is irreversible. I'm so tired of people saying, oh, don't worry, just go off it and you'll go right back to normal. Ain't happening, people. So that's where I met you. I met you because I saw you all over the internet discussing the fact that you weren't told. I just was like, wow, awesome. Who's this guy? Because you literally were saying, no, I'm not kidding. You were saying the things that I try to say all the time, but I'm an old guy, so I'm not necessarily listened to so much by the younger generation anymore. And that's okay. I don't have an issue with that. But so I saw you and I'm like, oh, you're saying the things that need to be said. And one of the things, and the balding, that was the thing that everybody latched onto with me, right?
Yeah, they were just like, he's complaining because he looks like Vladimir Putin. Like, and he's yeah, no, there's literally, I think Keffels posted something about that.
Figures.
And then there was another one that compared me with, like, Elon Musk without, like, the comb over. There's, like, just this big gap. Which is fine. Like, I
dude,
really
you're handsome. Who cared? Number one, number two. Hello, you all know I'm bald. Like, but that wasn't the point. That wasn't the point of what you were saying. And then why are trans women getting into your conversation? You're a trans dude. They don't get to have that conversation. Sorry, we don't. As trans men, don't get to have the conversation about trans women. They always tell us to shut up. So you know what, trans women out there, you don't get to have the conversation when a trans man is talking about his own experience because it's not your experience. So it's disgusting.
It's funny because people in the comments were just like after, so like it seems like the right wing or the conservative leaning side of Twitter found my video. Like, I just put it out in the air. I didn't expect anybody like really to look at it much.
Right.
And it was in response to like me saying like, I've transitioned. This is my life. I feel like somewhat comfortable where I'm at in terms of how I present, but at the same time, frankly, if I could go back and stop this from happening, I absolutely would, because there's a bunch of things that have happened now that, one, are irreversible, and two, if I had this like deep desire, like a lot of detransitioners do, to go back and try and live as female, like in greater society, I'm gonna have a hard time with that. And people are like, no, it's not, like, you're 21, like the body's amazing, it can reverse itself. So I made that video being like, look at me, like, listen to me and look at me, look at my hair, hear my voice. In music terms, I'm a bass 2. Bass 2 is the lowest voice part.
Wow.
Like, there is absolutely no way I could reintegrate into greater society and pass as a woman, which people on the GC side, the gender critical side, have a problem with me saying pass as a woman, in the sense of like, well, you can't define what a woman is. Like, that's the whole point. Like, we're trying not to follow like gender stereotypes.
That's right.
I'm thinking realistically here in small town America. Like, if you look like a man trying to be a woman, there's going to be a problem.
Yep.
And it's going to make me unsafe in a lot of situations.
Oh my gosh, so many.
Which is also why I transitioned in the first place. If I was going to live as a man, I needed to be convincing enough that it didn't create a safety concern.
So I want to go back just a little bit. When you were discussing taking testosterone, tell me what they told you about testosterone. Did they give you, you probably had to sign an informed consent something or another because they're worried about being sued.
I did.
And so this is interesting because I probably know what you're going to say. But when you're excited about getting hormones and you're given a piece of paper, are you actually reading that paper? So I'm sorry, I don't mean to answer for you, but
no, it's fine.
Give me that scenario that when you started.
No, I didn't read the paper. I don't even think it was specific to testosterone. I think it was just a general informed consent paper because it was just one page.
Did they tell you all the side effects, or you didn't read it, so you didn't even know about side effects?
Well, they told me the NP. It was an NP. Not like that matters much because mid-level practitioners can do a lot of the same stuff and prescribe drugs and so on. She kind of briefly went over. She's like, "All right, your voice is going to drop. your clitoris is going to get bigger, your breasts might shrink. And she said it all of this like verbatim, which of course me like being insecure about those words, I was like, ugh. But she was very blunt, and she's like, you might grow a little bit, you're probably going to get heavier, you might get more muscle, you might get more fat, and you're probably going to get a lot more hair everywhere. Like, are you sure you want to get yourself into that?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, yeah, that's why I want to take it.
That's right.
And so she's like, okay, as long as you understand that. And according to the letter, she was assuming that the behavioral health professional that interviewed me and did the assessment did it correctly and did it thoroughly. So she was acting in good faith and was like, okay, and based on this letter, you're ready to go. As long as we have an understanding, here you go.
Well, no, you're right. She was acting in good faith, and she asked you, and you said, yeah, because of course that's what you want. We all want to be hairy and dudes and, muscles and all of that. I mean, of course, that's like our dream to be that. But I don't think the reality of it sets in until you actually start happening. I mean, on paper, it looks amazing. But on reality, if you're not actually prepared for genitals changing, right? I mean, so many, even not only growth,
pain.
smell
So
changes, things change.
yeah.
Yeah, and no one talks about that. I've been one of the guys who have talked about it, but it's very small in our community that we talk about these types of things. So yeah, of course you were prepared because it was literally what you see and want. It's a difference than actually having it. So, oh gosh, dude, I swear, it's just such a... So what happened? Like, what was the catalyst for you to start thinking about, like, did I do...
Honestly, I wasn't really thinking about, whether or not, like, this was a mistake for me until after, I was on Instagram, and I didn't really post on Instagram. I kind of just followed people, and then I found Gays Against Groomers, and, the puberty blockers suck and all of that stuff, and I saw that you were affiliated with that. And kind of seeing the message, because I fundamentally disagreed with the informed consent model, especially because there were some people on YouTube, like you look at Ryan Barnes, Elle Palmer, some of the detrans girls like that, and what did they all do? They all went in to a clinic via informed consent, walked out with hormones, and look where they are now. And I was approaching it from like a patient health perspective because of my healthcare background. It's just about keeping people safe and making sure that we do the appropriate evaluations to rule out other potential problems before we jump to the most invasive treatment possible.
There you go.
Which makes sense, but people don't see it like that. And I think I reached out to Trans Against Groomers because I was like, oh, I'm a trans guy. I think that this what's going on with kids is completely wrong. I think what's going on with Planned Parenthood and all these clinics is wrong, but that's besides the point. Focus on the kids first, because they're kids versus adults. Like, who's the more vulnerable demographic? Kids. And they were like, well, do you want to start making content? And I was thinking, okay, video and words at the same time. Me, who the conspiracies on Twitter are that I'm actually a biological male boomer.
That's a compliment.
By the Russian government. Yeah. Or I'm employed by Matt Walsh. He's paying me. I have yet to see that paycheck, but Matt Walsh is paying me. I'm being paid by Russian blood money to fearmonger the masses. But I do identify as a boomer a little bit. I am not the most technically competent. So I'm like, okay, like me making videos and speaking and putting words in it and doing an overlay, I'm like, that's not going to work. So maybe I'll start on Twitter, where it's just words and it's short form content, right? So I started on Twitter, and I started following some people and thinking I'm doing this from a trans ally perspective, right? And then I was reading stories and reading, the experiences, and definitely having a lot of other mental issues going on, and I was like, hold on a second, this is my story, right? This sounds an awful lot like what I went through. And then it kind of made me think, oh God, did I do this for the right reasons? Am I a product of the I was a product of the thing I was arguing against, but am I one of those worst case scenarios? Which at this point I have no idea. I do know that I absolutely 100% would have not done this with the information I have today. Absolutely. I would just, if I had just let myself work through therapy, I would be living my happy butch lesbian life. And I would have much rather that than go through this.
That's a very powerful statement, my friend. I so appreciate your honesty. Like, gosh, that takes a lot to be honest about what's happening with you, and I appreciate it beyond as a transsexual man. I appreciate you so much because this isn't a space for everybody. It's just not. And it won't just, it's not magically going to make you the happiest person in the world. There's a lot of work that comes along with this. And is a 16-year-old prepared? Is a 16-year-old prepared? Clearly.
And not only was I 16, but, we, in the medical space and in the behavioral health space, they talk about competency. And obviously competency has a legal connotation as well. Because people say, well, when you think of competency, like competency hearings, is this defendant competent to stand trial or to defend on their behalf? And it's a whole behavioral health assessment, and it's a legal process. But also, for my own training, because now I'm in school for social work and I'm kind of beginning that training myself, there is a concept that as a helper that you want to know to the best of your ability that you're giving information and the client understands that information, and that that they are going to act, or you're hoping that they're going to act in the best interest of themselves. And also, are they at a level emotionally where they can even understand what you're trying to tell them? And I can look back and say, I was not competent to make that call. I was not competent to make that decision outside of the fact that I was 16. But it was just full steam ahead.
And so that's very similar to, I'm very connected to detransitioners because I feel that they are still part. Whether or not, whatever choice you make, Casey, you're still part of the community, and that's why I
What? But
respect
Katie
you.
Montgomery didn't say I was.
Is she part of the community? Because I don't think so. She's part of herself. It's all about her. But you are part of this community. You will never not be part of it, even if you choose whatever path. You are part of this community, and you do need to have love and respect, and everyone needs to hear your voice, because you will save people from taking the same. That's the thing I just don't understand. Why are people so mad at you for saying things that could actually save other young people from taking the wrong? That you would think that they would. I want that. It doesn't affect my transition. Your space does not affect me. No detransitioner affects me on any level about my own transition. And that's really why I have such a hard time with the fact that you're treated so nasty. I saw some nasty stuff thrown at you, my friend, and I'm like, this is not a trans community. This is some insane ideology.
I mean, it was. I will briefly just talk about like the response that I got. It's funny because I never expected to go viral. Like my account's a week, 2 weeks old. It's not even that old. And like I just post this video, and then I'm starting to gain a little more traction, and then I go from 100 followers to 200 to 400, by day 500, then it's like 1,000, and then it just explodes.
Wow!
And there was like the first explosion where it kind of hit the right wing side, and I was getting like oh, we pity you, you're still a woman, like that kind of stuff, and then kind of died down, and then exploded again, and that's where things got really gnarly, because it hit the trans side of Twitter. And everybody, it was interesting because they're like, you're just complaining that testosterone didn't make you hot, or that you went bald and all this stuff. And I had said previously on Twitter that I was kind of more or less okay with how things physically turned out in my transition, and I was balding, but there was some hair loss happening because of PCOS, but that testosterone exacerbated that. So people were like, he's lying about his medical history and all this stuff, and if you had just looked at your dad and looked at your family history, you would have known if you were going bald. Well, frankly, I'm going to say this. I only knew my dad. He has full head of hair, and he's in his 70s. That's the other thing, too. I have very old parents. So, like, my dad's 74, my mom's 64. So I was raised by boomers, if that...
I'm a boomer. I'm a boomer. I'm a boomer.
Yeah, so, but, like, he had a full head of hair. I didn't know his grandparents because, surprise, they were dead before I was born. And my biological mom, she has a full head of hair, and I also don't know what her family looks like. So, simply saying, well, just look at your family, and they'll see, like... And again, like, I can guarantee you this wouldn't have happened if I didn't go on hormones.
Well, oh my God,
some hair loss happened.
That's 100% true. That only happened because of testosterone. That you wouldn't have gone bald if you never took the testosterone. Those people are insane. Number one, they're gaslighting you. Number two, they all know that that's why they're attacking you, because they know on some level what you are saying is true. I get the same gaslighting, right? It's like, wait, I have 30 years experience of transitioning, and I had atrophy, my friend. Thank God you didn't have any of those. I had atrophy, which almost killed me. They say I'm lying. I'm like, okay, this is insane. Why would we lie? Why would you sit here? Why would you, Casey, put yourself out on the crazy internet where it's full of insane to be hated? That's why it's BS. It's complete BS, and I just hate it. I hate it.
I can answer that because I am secretly a boomer being paid by the alt-right and Russian with blood money. And I'm an employee of Matt Walsh. This is not my reality. This is a story. I have a script. This is made up.
It's just so, it's gone so absurd. I mean, really,
I remember seeing an article. Somebody sent this article to me, and it was like, this is proof that he's fake. And I was looking at it. I'm like, this is
my God, dude.
Like, they ask us for proof, but I legitimately want to know where your proof is. Like, okay, I followed some more conservative sides of Twitter. And now also, like, look, I follow, like, Katie Montgomery and Keffels, and I follow a lot of those people now because I also kind of want to see if they're shit-talking.
That's right, you should. You should. Yeah.
And, I follow, like, Joe Biden and AOC and a bunch of these other people. Does that mean I agree with them? No. Just because I follow Matt Walsh doesn't mean I agree with everything that he says.
Well, that's how immature they are. Dude, I follow everyone. I follow everyone. Everyone who's on the right, on the left, in the middle. You've got to. You have to. That's how smart you are. You've got to see what everyone is saying. If you're only in a tunnel, which these people are, they're only in a tunnel. They only hang out with trans people. They only hear the same rhetoric. You know what I mean? They're being fed this machine. They don't have any idea what's going on in the actual real world. They're being fed. These are young people, and young people are easily... Okay, you know that. They're easily twisted and molded into... That's why they go after the young people. These kind of movements always go after the young people because the young people are soldiers, right? And then now they're just incorporating them as 10 years old and 11 years old is what they're doing, and trying to make this community so large that nobody could say that it doesn't exist. So they're doing it in a way that's lying and deceitful. And then somehow... I don't want to say you got sucked into it because that's not my place to say that, but I think something about your transition wasn't 100% there. You didn't know what you were getting. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Correct.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear cut like I thought it was.
That's right.
And again, there was a lot of other things going on. Like I think there was a lot of body insecurity that was interpreted as gender dysphoria because, and I posted about this on Twitter where, like, I felt bad about myself, and I thought because I felt bad about myself and some of my feminine characteristics that made me trans. And then as an adult, talking to people, finding out that, well, most people, including women, feel bad about themselves. They feel bad about their chest. They feel bad about how they look and their weight and how that's distributed. And somebody was like, are you telling me that he never talked to anybody about this stuff? Well, also, I was raised fundamentalist Christian, okay? So that, it was borderline cult-like. It's funny how I moved from, like, one cult-like community to another cult-like community of two very different opinions and spectrums, but, like, very, like, pigeonholed, narrow focus of being a fundamentalist Christian and growing up in that. Like, it was to the point where, like, I wasn't allowed to listen to any other music except Christian music because fill your mind with things that are good. YouTube was only educational. We've left, by the way. This is not reality now, but this is what my reality was then. Evolution is a scam. Science is lying to you. Everybody's lying to you. Ironic that the fundamentalists are saying science is lying to you, and then... That's right. On the other side, there's
it's like actually identical. You can literally place them on top of each other. It's very cult-like, don't you? So on some level, you already had this experience in that cult-like atmosphere.
Yeah, and it's funny because the only reason I left the church is because I was transitioning. That was the only reason why.
Wow.
And kind of growing up in that, we were discouraged from talking about our bodies. Talking about our bodies in any sort of way besides, like, functional was a sin because it was lustful. There is also a lot of rhetoric around purity culture and how it impacts women and young girls. And for me, I mean, this is something I mentioned on my page, but I was sexually abused as a child by my dad. So male father figures were kind of not like a great. I didn't have a great relationship with that or anybody that had that role. And the pastors knew about this. We had a youth pastor and a regular pastor. And so when talking about purity culture, the idea, and again, remember, we are like young teenagers, and this is like boys and girls listening to this in youth group on Wednesday night. It's supposed to be a fun time talking about like, purity and virginity is one of the ultimate gifts that a woman can give her husband. And that is sacred, right? And you don't want to take that away because of lust, because of sin of the flesh. And I mean, again, I'm like 12, okay?
Wow.
And I talked with my pastor afterwards, and I was just like, well, what about my situation? Because it was like, well, if you lose your virginity, it's your fault and all of this stuff. And I was like, I was 7. Like, I couldn't control it. And he goes, well, then I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. That's one less thing you can give your future husband.
What? So they're blaming you for your molestation at 7? Yes. Oh my God, that's just horrible.
And that's what the church that I came from, because
that's
I
not Christianity.
Before we moved here. No, that's it's not. It's absolutely not.
It's not.
That's why I say fundamentalism or fundamentalist Christians, because I know that's not mainstream.
Nope.
And like the evangelicals. I had, in my trial when I was 9, I had to testify against the majority of people I knew at the old church I was at because they took my dad's side.
Oh my God! I am so sorry, my friend. That is just,
I mean,
that's
trauma.
It is
what it is.
Yeah, I know, but I just want to say I'm sorry, because that's just making so much more trauma for a young person. And that, again, so some of the stuff that's happening today is trauma based. I don't care. I had trauma. There's trauma in our transition. There's trauma around what's going on with ourselves. A lot of us have been molested. If they took a poll, you'd be shocked at how many trans people have been molested as kids, and just general in the world. It's an actual thing that people don't want to talk about it, and it gets slid under the rug. And look at you having to testify, and they're thinking you're lying. At how old were you? 9?
9 when I testified.
What a traumatic experience for you. Holy
well, yeah, and
moly.
it's interesting because I actually did get cross-examined. I got cross-examined by like 2 Boston lawyers, like trying to just come at me, and I had to read the transcript of the interview I had with a forensic psychologist describing what exactly happened.
I'm so sorry.
I had to read the transcript. I mean,
Nope.
It's fine.
No, it upsets me.
It's not fine, but like
God damn these people.
It is what it is.
Yeah, I'm glad that you are that way, but it's just horrible. It's not something anyone should have to deal with. And so, that's why I belong to Gays Against Groomers, and why I belong with Trans Against Groomers, and, all of this idea that children are part of this whole thing now is so weird.
Yeah, and again, all of this, the psychologist who evaluated me knew. She knew this. And there was this idea that, and this was my mom's biggest fear, was that I was doing this because of the sexual abuse, and I had this idea that if I was a boy, this wouldn't have happened.
Yep.
Even though she told me, she was like, frankly, I know your father, he probably would have done this even if you were a boy, so that's not going to change anything.
Wow.
Which probably would have happened as well.
Yeah.
But, it kind of where I came from in looking at my own transition and, how I feel now versus, like, would I have transitioned? It kind of started from that, well, was she right that, the abuse as a kid played a role in this? And it went from, well, no, of course not, you're trans because you're trans, there's no other reason for it, to, well, maybe it did play a role, to, I can't say if it did or didn't play a role, to, well, if I'm saying that, then it absolutely did play a role.
Wow.
And if that played a role, then what other things that I went through as a kid and what other problems I had played a role in this? And then, was this even gender dysphoria, or is this a conglomeration of other symptoms relating to my body?
That's right. That's right. And that's all I'm asking for us to pull back a little bit and start to look at these types of things that Casey's talking about, like the trauma, because I guarantee you there's a lot of trauma involved in our transition. And so that's, sometimes I do hear that. I do hear, in the newer generation, they don't want to be girls because of puberty and trauma, and they just want to hide themselves. And partly that kind of makes sense to me, because when I see the upswing, the insane upswing of FTMs in your generation, I'm sorry, but I have to say, because how come all of a sudden, out of nowhere, when I was transitioning, there was nobody? And I grew up with a bunch of
Yeah.
butch girls. So, no, there's something amiss here. And you prove it to me. You prove it to me, and also now I think you're going to prove it to a lot of people. You're not, the thing is this, Casey, I don't think you're trying to stop people from transitioning. I do not believe that.
No.
No way are you doing that. You're actually trying to help people have a better, more healthy transition.
Yeah. That's the other thing. People say that I hate all trans people and I want all trans healthcare to go away. Now, I can understand because people like Matt Walsh kind of like
That's right.
retweeted the video and so on.
That's right.
I can understand because they're pretty firm on their beliefs and they are more anti-trans in general. Their bigger gamut right now is the kids thing, which
Yep.
you know, I agree with. I think we all agree that that's why we kind of tolerate them, because we're just trying to, you know, stop kids from making
That's
irreversible
right.
decisions, right? Sorry, I'm trying to think.
Okay.
Like, I'm aware that people could misuse the story, but at the same time, at the end of the day, I'm like, just because there could be some people that take this the wrong way, does that mean I shouldn't speak out? Like, something wrong is going on. Like,
That's
I'm not
right.
the only one this has happened to. There's a ton of people that this has happened to, and I'm actually thankful that, generally speaking, for the most part, I don't feel like I need to return to my prior self. That's what really gets me. That's what really is like heart wrenching, is seeing, especially a lot of these like detrans girls and women. Oh my God, some of these people, and like my heart just breaks for them. I don't have that deep down desire or yearning. So I mean, that's why I say I don't know what I am. And like I would be fine living as a male, but at the same time, if I could go back, I absolutely wouldn't have done this. I would just be like a kick-ass butch lesbian and live my life.
Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah.
like I just, my heart breaks for these people, and
know.
you know, you hear the side effects of Lupron and you know the long-term implications of unregulated testosterone or estrogen use where it's not observed. It just like there's a lot more. Have I been hurt by the system? Yes, I have. But there's a lot more people that a lot worse things are happening to, and their case is a lot more common than mine is, at least that we know at this point. And that's kind of why I am saying something.
Well, and again, you're a hero. You're my hero. That's, so you know that. Number two, what you're doing is you're sort of a catalyst on some level to say, oh, so let's look deeper now. So that's why you're so great, because you know you're not saying, even you're not saying you're detransitioning. You're saying I might still say it this way. I might, but I would have probably never done this if I had certain information, and that's the great message you're giving there. And I think it says a lot about you. You have a huge amount of integrity. You care about the trans community. Those people who are railing on, they don't care. They're you know, those are the people that aren't necessarily medically transitioning or just non-binary, who can literally go back to living in their old selves in 2 seconds, and none of this ever affected them. That's what people need to understand. We're talking about medical transitioning. I don't care about your identity choice. I care about the fact that young people are putting testosterone irreversible. What? How?
Absolutely.
How are we saying things are reversible, my friend? How?
It even says in WPATH that certain effects of hormones are reversible.
That is insane. It's not true.
I am printing out the entirety of the Standards of Care 8, and I am looking at it, all 260 freaking pages of it, because you know, one thing, and I think I actually messaged you on Instagram, but it was under like a slightly different account.
Okay.
That I was like, okay, I forget what exactly I said, but we had like a tiny conversation, and I was like, I really want to know who these shareholders they blatantly mention in the introduction are contributing to the Standards of Care.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you're financially contributing and may or may not have medical training or any expertise in this, but because you're putting money in, you get to determine what the standards of care for
That's right.
children are.
No, that's right. Great point. So everyone needs to understand, WPATH is a self-appointed. They weren't appointed by the government. They weren't appointed by any medicals. They are they've been around for a long, long time. Even I think maybe near when I transitioned, they started. They've been around for a long time. I do not support them anymore. I feel like they've gone off the rails. They've become a political organization. They're funded by pharmaceutical. What do you think they're getting all their money from? And that those top members, those are billionaires. You know that. Those are people who have a shit ton of money who are just flinging it. And so I don't follow the WPATH guidelines because I think they're whacked. And I think that, you know, they don't do us a service in our trans community. And they're not the end all. This is also what I want to say. WPATH is not the end all be all. It is not the structure of. I disagree with that. So I think people need to understand that it's a self-appointed organization. It is not necessarily. It's not necessarily. We're not all on board with it. So Casey, I really appreciate you. I really just you're awesome, and I'm so happy we connected. And thank you for taking the time with me today. It means a lot to me. And whatever I can do, I'm here for you. You know that. I got your back, kiddo. Like you don't. Just keep going. I'm gonna keep
give me
pushing.
my hair back, please.
Enjoy the baldness. I enjoy mine. Enjoy it.
Yeah, it's not as much about like not looking bald. It's just like, okay, if I wanted to go back, bald woman, hard sell.
Yeah,
bald
but
man, not a hard sell.
No, but I know I actually dated a bald woman for a long time, and it looks awesome, and you have a great head. So it's also about your head shape. So don't stress on the hair. That's the last thing you need to worry about. It just is. It's not. I understand it, and I appreciate your authenticity around it, but just let that go for now, and you got bigger fight out there. So thanks, Casey. And
clearly I have a bigger
you have a bigger fight. Just so you know, whether or not you like it or not, the universe just plopped you down, dude, and said, "Hey, you better get ready because you're young and you're youthful and you got energy and you can do this. You can do it. We got you, dude. Many of us got you. We got you."
I really appreciate it. Really, the support.
I know you do.
I wouldn't have stayed on Twitter.
That's right. That should say everything right there to the world, too. This guy went on Twitter within, a week. You are exploded. People saw you because they're waiting. I keep emphasizing that. People are waiting for your voices, right? Blair and I, they already know us, but they're waiting. We need you. We need you in order to save the horrible stuff that's happening in our community. So with that, comment, like, subscribe, do all those things, and send Casey a love letter because he's a cool person and really needs our love right now. So...